Hello and welcome to Thing 304 Managerial Economics. In this session, we'll be looking at monopoly and monopolistic competition. Remember, we are trying to select the price and the outputs that would help firms maximize profit and go on to calculate the extent of profit that the firms would make. This was really what we did in the previous session. We are now moving on to look at monopoly and monopolistic competition because, like I said earlier, we can't treat all industries the same way because of the way they are structured. So the key topics to be covered in this session are as follows. We'll be looking at the characteristics of monopoly and then be considering profit maximization under monopoly. We would go on to look at the characteristics of monopolistic competition and then look at profit maximization under monopolistic competition. As usual, our text is the basic one, which is Baye and Prince, and then our concentration would be on the 8th edition. But like I said, or like I've been saying, if you've not got the 8th edition, just look at any other edition that you'd be able to find. Now, when we talk about an industry or a market being monopoly, we are talking about a market that has only one firm. So if that market has just one firm, it just simply means that the product that is going to be producing in that firm is going to be a unique product. So that product would have no substitute. Now, because that product has no substitute and that industry has just one firm, the firm is the same as the industry, and we would find that the firm or the industry would have, the firm would have a substantial degree of control over the price of the product. If the firm has a substantial degree of control over the price of the product, then if it needs to sell more, it would have to reduce its prices. Remember, I'm not saying that the firm has an ultimate degree of control over the price. I'm saying that the firm has a substantial degree of control over the price of a product. Just because you are the only producer in the industry, that doesn't mean that you can increase your price anyhow. You can increase your price, but consumers are going to be determining how much they want to buy at any point in time. So if they are going to be deciding on how much they are going to be buying at any point in time, it means that when you increase your price so much, they would reduce how much quantity they are buying. So they are going to be going by the law of demand. And for that reason, we would have the demand curve, which is the same as the average revenue curve, and the same as the price curve, sloping downwards. So unlike the perfectly competitive firm where we have the demand curve being horizontal, under the circumstance we are having the demand curve sloping downwards. And remember, the demand curve is the same as the price curve, which is the same as the average revenue curve. Because the firm here has a substantial degree of control over the price of the product, what it means is that we are going to be seeing the firm's demand curve sloping downwards, and that firm is a price maker. If we know that for price makers, or we've seen in the previous sessions that for price makers, we have a downward sloping average revenue or demand curve or the price curve. And then we also have a downward sloping marginal revenue curve. And we see that the price would always be greater than the marginal revenue curve. We would have to find the price curve being above the marginal revenue curve, even though both of them are downward sloping. Now, coming to our core issue, which is profit maximization, selecting the price and the output that would help firms maximize profit, we need to consider the short run and consider the long run. In the short run, the monopoly firm would be confronted with four situations. It would have one, it could be making abnormal profits. Two, it could be making normal profits. Three, it could be making, it could be breaking even, or sorry, normal profits is the same as breaking even. It could be making losses. And 3 and 4, it could be in a situation where it has to be shutting down. So we need to consider all of these. Now, turning to the mathematical point as far as this is concerned, you can be giving a cost function and then a demand function. It will be your responsibility to find the marginal revenue function from this demand function, and then find the marginal cost from the total cost function. And then because profit maximization is marginal revenue being equal to marginal cost, that would help you find the price and the outputs that would maximize profit. Once those have been found, you can select the price and the outputs that would maximize your profit. I've given you an example in here. You can look at it and work it out. Now, let's look at the long run as well. What would happen to the monopolist? In the long run, the monopolist would be confronted with all four situations. So unlike the perfectly competitive firm, where in the long run, the firm will just be breaking even because there's free entry and exit, no such condition exists under monopoly, and therefore, in the long run, all four scenarios can occur in the long run. Now, we can compare the monopolist to the perfectly competitive firm. And we would see that if you look at this diagram, read the textbook, but you see that the monopolist would produce small output and yet charge higher prices compared to the perfectly competitive firm. Perfectly competitive firm's output is bigger and has smaller prices. So in terms of welfare or societal welfare, the perfectly competitive firm is more beneficial than the monopolist. Now let's talk about monopolistic competition. Under monopolistic competition, there are numerous buyers and sellers. The products that are being produced are differentiated. Now they are differentiated, and really this is what distinguishes them from that of perfect competition. So the products are substitutes, but they are not perfect substitutes, unlike what we saw in perfect competition. Another thing is that there's free entry and exit, so firms can enter at any time and then leave at any time. Now, remember that once they have products being substitutes and not being perfect substitutes, they will still have some degree of control over the price of the product. So just like monopoly, they are going to be having a downward sloping demand curve. They are price makers as well, and so their demand curve is going to be downward sloping, or their price or average revenue curve is also going to be downward sloping, because for people to buy more of their products, they need to reduce their prices, which means that their marginal revenue curve would also be downward sloping, and it will be lower than the price at all times. Again, we look at the short run situations and the long run situations. In the short run, definitely for the monopolistic competitive firm, we are going to be making abnormal profits, normal profits, losses, or break even. This is a typical example that I've given to you where the monopolistic competitive firm is making abnormal profits. However, in the long run, the monopolistic competitive firm will just be breaking even. And you can guess the reason. The reason is just because of free entry and exit. Once there's free entry and exit, more firms would enter if the firms are making abnormal profits, and that would drive the price down and affect the profit. If they were making losses, the firms would leave, and that would increase the price, and that would increase the profit as well. So just like perfect competition, in the long run, monopolistic competitive firms would only be breaking even. I have an example for you, which is looking at maximizing profits in the monopolistic competitive firm. This is the cost function, and then you can use that to arrive at you have the demand curve. You can use that to arrive at your answer. Try your hands on this and let's see how it goes. Thank you for your attention, and see you in the next session.